At first light, when the sky is neither night nor day but a quiet negotiation between the two, the land exhales. You can hear it if you stand still long enough. The sound is not a single note but a layered breath, dew sliding from leaves, insects tuning their wings, distant water loosening its grip on stone. This is the hour when the planet feels awake before humanity, when ancient systems that predate names and borders resume their work without announcement. The ground remembers everything. It remembers fire and flood, migration and extinction, the slow patience of roots that split rock grain by grain. To walk here is to step into a living archive written not in ink but in weather, bone, and time. The forest rises from the valley like a tide frozen mid-surge. Trunks stand shoulder to shoulder, each marked by its own biography of scars and seasons. Some bear the lightning's signature, a blackened spiral where energy once carved a path to earth. Others carry the pale ladders of fungi climbing toward light. Leaves collect the morning in their cupped palms, each droplet a lens that flips the world upside down. Somewhere within this cathedral of chlorophyll, a bird begins its first call, testing the air as if to ask whether it is safe to speak. The call is answered, then echoed, until the silence becomes a woven fabric of sound. Life here is organized by relationships rather than rulers. Ants trace invisible highways along fallen logs, hauling seeds heavier than their own bodies because evolution has taught them the mathematics of cooperation. Beneath the soil, networks of fungi braid themselves around roots, trading minerals for sugars in a quiet economy older than any market. Trees that appear solitary above ground are in constant conversation below, sharing warnings of drought or insect attack through chemical whispers. The forest does not vote, yet consensus emerges. It does not plan, yet it adapts. It does not mourn, yet it remembers. Beyond the trees, the land opens into a grassland that rolls like an ocean paused by gravity. Each blade bends to the wind, and together they make waves that travel for kilometers. This is a place shaped by grazers and fire, by hooves and heat in a choreography refined over millennia. When large herbivores move through, they trim and fertilize, press seeds into soil, and keep shrubs from claiming the sun. Fire follows, sometimes sparked by lightning, sometimes by human hands guided by tradition, resetting the clock without erasing the past. Ash feeds the next generation, and green returns with an urgency that feels like joy. A herd appears at the horizon, silhouettes at first, then bodies resolved into muscle and hide. Their movement is deliberate, economical, as if the land itself were walking. Calves stay close to mothers, learning the routes by following warmth and scent. Predators watch from a distance, not villains but editors, removing the weak, sharpening the whole. When a chase erupts, it is not cruelty that unfolds but physics and choice, speed and stamina deciding what hunger will teach today. The grass bears witness and springs back, resilient in its acceptance of change. Water writes a different script. A river cuts through stone with the persistence of curiosity, asking the same question until the answer gives way. Along its banks, life stacks itself in tiers, moss at the waterline, reeds and shrubs above, trees leaning out as if to drink. Fish hold in the current, bodies angled to the flow, reading the language of pressure and vibration. Insects skate the surface tension, their shadows racing beneath them like secrets. Every bend is a library of stories deposited by floods, seeds from far away, bones from upstream, the occasional human artifact that will confuse future geologists. In the wetlands where the river loosens its grip and spreads, the world becomes reflective. Sky and water trade places, clouds drifting below as easily as above. Here, patience is rewarded. A heron stands like a question mark, neck coiled, eyes calculating depth and distance. Frogs test the edges of sound, their calls pulsing like a heartbeat for the marsh. At night, bioluminescent plankton can turn footsteps into galaxies, each step igniting a brief universe before darkness reclaims it. The wetland filters and buffers, slows and stores, a living infrastructure that asks nothing but space. Farther still, the land rises and dries, the air thinning as mountains assemble themselves out of collision and time. Peaks are not merely high places, they are weather factories, water towers, archives of ice. Glaciers creep like thoughts you cannot shake, carrying rocks that sing when they grind. Their meltwater feeds rivers that feed fields, linking summit to supper. When ice retreats, it reveals raw ground that lichens colonize first, painting stone with the colors of persistence. Each species that follows reads the conditions and decides whether to stay, turning geology into community. In the thin air, animals wear their adaptations like poetry. Lungs stretch, blood thickens, fur insulates. A goat places its hooves on impossibly narrow ledges, gravity negotiating with balance in real time. Eagles ride thermals, reading the mountain's invisible handwriting. Flowers crouch low, their blooms vivid against the austerity, advertising to the few pollinators brave enough to climb. Storms arrive without apology, teaching humility to anything that believes it can dominate altitude. Deserts teach a different humility. Here, scarcity is the sculptor. Day burns and night freezes, and life learns to be efficient or not at all. Plants hide their leaves as spines, store water in swollen tissues, or sleep as seeds until rain wakes them. Animals move at the margins of time, nocturnal or crepuscular, reading temperature like a clock. Tracks tell stories better than faces. A lizard's delicate signature, a fox's looping confidence, the purposeful line of a beetle carrying the sun on its shell. When rain finally comes, the desert answers with an explosion of color so brief it feels like a secret shared only with those who waited. Along the coast, land and sea negotiate constantly, drawing and redrawing the line that humans try to fix on maps. Tides pull with lunar insistence, exposing and hiding worlds twice a day. Tide pools become theaters of adaptation, each organism equipped for extremes of salt, temperature, and exposure. Barnacles cement themselves to rock, clams wait with patient siphons, sea stars pry with slow strength. Kelp forests sway offshore, underwater cathedrals where fish find shelter and otters wrap themselves in fronds to sleep without drifting away. The ocean carries memory in currents, heat in motion, life in layers. Out in the open water, scale shifts again. Plankton, tiny drifters, do the heavy lifting of oxygen production, exhaling a gift that land breathes. Schools of fish move like thought, turning as one to confuse predators and conserve energy. Whales travel ancient routes, their songs mapping seafloors we are only beginning to understand. When a whale falls, its body becomes an island of sustenance in the abyss, feeding communities for decades. Even death here is generous, a long echo rather than an end. Above all this, the atmosphere performs its ceaseless dance. Winds transport heat and moisture, storms balance pressure, clouds script the sky. Dust from one continent fertilizes another, linking deserts to rainforests in an airborne alliance. Smoke from fires can seed clouds, rain falling on lands far removed from the flame. The planet is not a set of isolated scenes but a single story told in chapters that overlap, revise, and respond. Humans enter this story late, but not quietly. Our footprints are deep and numerous, our tools powerful, our stories persuasive. We have learned to read some of the planet's languages, satellite images, ice cores, genetic codes, and we have translated them into warnings and wonders. We build cities that glow at night like constellations fallen to Earth, and fields that feed billions by borrowing tomorrow's nutrients today. We travel faster than seasons, carry species across oceans, alter rivers and climates. We are both students and disruptors, capable of care and catastrophe. Yet everywhere, resilience persists. In cities, plants crack concrete to reach light, birds adapt their songs to traffic's low hum, foxes and raccoons learn the rhythms of trash day. In recovering forests, young trees lean into gaps left by logging, their growth rings recording relief. Coral reefs, battered by heat, can rebound where waters cool and pressures ease, larvae settling like hope on bare skeletons. Restoration is not a return to a photograph but a negotiation with the present, a chance to decide what comes next. There are places where ancient practices still guide stewardship. Indigenous fire management reduces catastrophic burns by working with seasons rather than against them. Rotational grazing mimics wild herds, healing soil. Sacred groves protect biodiversity through belief, proving that values can be as effective as fences. These approaches remind us that knowledge does not always arrive wearing modern clothes, and that humility can be a technology. As night falls, the planet's other lights emerge. Stars puncture the dark, a reminder of scale that steadies the mind. Insects glow briefly, signaling mates or warning predators. In the forest, eyeshine flickers as animals test the air. The moon lifts tides and moods, synchronizing events across distances too large to see. Somewhere, a seed germinates unseen, responding to moisture and warmth, committing to a future that may include drought or abundance, fire or shade. By morning, the land exhales again. The cycle continues, not because it must but because it can. The earth is not fragile in the way glass is fragile, it is resilient in the way a story is resilient, capable of absorbing shock and changing shape while retaining meaning. What remains uncertain is the role we choose to play. We can be a brief, loud footnote, or a careful editor who helps the narrative endure. The planet does not require our admiration, but it responds to our actions. To listen, to really listen, is to realize that every choice becomes sediment, every silence a space where something else might speak. The day advances with a confidence that feels earned. Light thickens, shadows shorten, and the world reveals details that dawn kept secret. On a rocky outcrop, lizards flatten themselves to the sun, turning heat into motion. In the canopy, leaves rearrange their angles, small solar panels optimized by instinct. Pollinators begin their routes, navigating by color, scent, and memory, stitching plant to plant in a moving embroidery that feeds forests and fields alike. Each visit is a transaction and a promise, nectar exchanged for pollen, survival traded for continuity. Time moves differently depending on where you stand. In a meadow, minutes feel long, stretched by the patience of watching grass sway. In a storm, seconds compress, each thunderclap rewriting the sky. The earth holds all these clocks at once. Rocks measure time in pressure and patience, their grains rearranged by forces too slow for fear. Rivers measure it in bends and floods, their calendars marked by debris lines on trunks. Living beings measure it in heartbeats and seasons, in migrations remembered by muscles rather than maps. Migration is one of the planet's oldest sentences, written and rewritten across latitudes. Birds lift off guided by stars they have never studied, carrying fat reserves that must be perfectly calculated. Butterflies weigh almost nothing yet cross continents, their journeys divided among generations who inherit direction like a rumor. Caribou traverse tundra in numbers that turn the land into a moving weather system, their hooves aerating soil, their presence shaping plant communities. Even trees migrate, though they do so slowly, seeds riding wind, water, and animals to places where tomorrow's climate might suit them better. Climate itself is not a single thing but a conversation between sun and sea, ice and air. It swings and sways, sometimes gently, sometimes abruptly. The past leaves clues, pollen trapped in sediment, bubbles of ancient air frozen in ice, rings inside trees that widen or tighten depending on fortune. These records speak of warmth and cold, drought and deluge, resilience and collapse. They remind us that change is normal, but pace matters. When change accelerates beyond the ability of systems to adapt, stories break mid-sentence. In the ocean, currents braid the globe, carrying warmth from equator to pole, nutrients from depth to surface. Upwellings feed blooms that ripple outward through food webs. Where warm and cold waters meet, productivity surges, and fishermen have followed these invisible boundaries for centuries. Technology now reveals them in color-coded maps, but the knowledge existed long before, passed down in songs and seasons. The sea remembers routes as faithfully as any road, though its signs are written in temperature and salinity rather than stone. Underwater, sound travels farther than light. Whales speak across basins, their calls bending around mountains submerged in darkness. Fish listen for reefs the way travelers listen for bells. Even shrimp contribute, snapping their claws to create a crackle that fills shallow waters, a background noise of life at work. Silence here would be alarming. It would mean absence, a page torn from the book. On land, soil does quiet miracles. A teaspoon holds more life than a city, bacteria and nematodes, mites and fungi forming a bustling metropolis beneath our feet. They decompose, fix nitrogen, build structure, and store carbon, turning death into fertility. When soil is disturbed beyond recovery, dust takes its place, and winds carry it away like a warning. When soil is cared for, it becomes a bank account that accrues interest, feeding crops and buffering floods, anchoring communities. Fire, often feared, is also a healer when allowed to behave as it evolved. Some seeds require heat to open, their coats designed to wait for flame. Pines release cones only after a blaze, trusting ash to nourish seedlings. In fire-adapted landscapes, suppression can be more dangerous than flame, allowing fuel to accumulate until the inevitable burn becomes catastrophic. Understanding this requires letting go of simple villains and heroes, accepting that nature's tools can harm and heal depending on context. As afternoon leans toward evening, clouds gather with theatrical timing. A storm approaches, its anvil spreading like a thought that cannot be contained. The air tastes metallic. Birds quiet, insects seek shelter, mammals read the pressure change in bones and instincts. When rain arrives, it does so with purpose. Dust lifts, releasing a scent that signals renewal. Drops drum leaves, carve miniature rivers in soil, and fill basins that will become temporary worlds for tadpoles and insects. Lightning writes brief signatures across the sky, nitrogen fixed by fire and delivered by rain. Afterward, the world feels rinsed. Colors deepen, edges sharpen. Fungi push up overnight, fruiting bodies like punctuation marks announcing decomposition underway. Scavengers appear, cleaning what the storm has claimed. Nothing is wasted for long. Even decay is a form of generosity, a passing of energy from one hand to another. Human stories interweave here, whether acknowledged or not. A village sits near the river because water remembers paths and returns. Fields follow contours because gravity insists. Festivals align with harvests and moons because success once depended on listening. Modern life has added layers, steel, glass, algorithms, but the foundation remains geological and biological. When floods come, they follow old roots. When heat intensifies, it respects latitude and elevation. The planet's grammar does not change because our vocabulary has grown. There are moments when listening becomes unavoidable. A drought teaches restraint. A storm teaches humility. A pandemic teaches connection. In these moments, the illusion of separation thins, and the systems we depend on reveal their interdependence. Food chains and supply chains rhyme more than we like to admit. Health travels through air and water, through animals and cities, through choices made far away. Hope is not naive here, it is practical. It looks like corridors that allow animals to move between fragments of habitat. It looks like rivers given room to flood safely, wetlands restored to drink excess water. It looks like energy drawn from sun and wind without borrowing against the future. It looks like stories told accurately, without spectacle eclipsing substance, inspiring care grounded in understanding. Education, at its best, is a form of rewilding. It reconnects people to processes they were taught to ignore. It replaces fear with curiosity, apathy with agency. When children learn the names of local birds, those birds gain advocates. When communities measure their own air and water, data becomes personal. Knowledge roots itself more deeply when it is lived rather than lectured. Night returns, softer this time. Crickets resume their metronome, bats sketch arcs against fading light, owls begin their patrols. In the distance, a city hums, a reminder that human rhythms continue even as others rise. The stars emerge again, patient witnesses to repetition and change. Somewhere, ice calves from a glacier with a sound like thunder, a small contribution to a global story of melt and motion. Somewhere else, a reef spawns in synchrony, releasing clouds of life timed to moon and temperature. The Earth does not ask us to be perfect. It asks us to be attentive. To notice thresholds before they are crossed, to value slow gains over quick wins, to remember that belonging is not ownership. The land has held far worse than us and will hold far more after, but the quality of the chapter we write matters to those who share it now. As sleep takes hold, the planet continues its work. Tectonic plates inch, stars burn, microbes multiply. Tomorrow's dawn is already being prepared by forces that do not sleep. When light returns, it will find the world altered in small ways, a leaf fallen, a track erased, a seed sprouted. Change will have happened quietly, as it always does. The question is not whether the story continues, but how carefully we choose to read it, and how responsibly we decide to add our lines.